You're listening to the Supply Chain Sessions, the ESPAS Global Freight podcast, and I'm Kelly Vasey, your host. Each month, I'll engage with freight industry specialists to discuss key issues within the global supply chain and logistics sector and talk about general themes and trends in freight forwarding. Good afternoon and welcome to today's episode of the Supply Chain Sessions. Today I'm joined by Etienne Dodane and Amanda Melesi. I hope I pronounced that correctly, Amanda. I met both Etienne and Amanda through our networking as part of the SMMT, the Automotive Trade Association. Etienne, an engineer and scientist by trade, works alongside Amanda to nurture and help develop businesses. And today we're actually talking about final mile frontiers as a starting point. Etienne, you've developed a solution, a drone solution that I'm hoping you can tell us all about. Obviously, we're logistics people, so we're looking after freight in the main here, but final mile delivery is obviously a key part of that. So we're really happy to chat to you today in that
Thank
regard.
you for the invitation. It's very kind of you, and it's a pleasure being here today.
Wonderful. So tell me, what actually inspired you to develop the drone solution for final mile delivery, and tell us a bit about what gap in the market it aims to fill.
Well, it stems from a long time ago. You had a large number of applications that could be used in conjunction with aircraft of all kinds, but the technology wasn't mature enough to actually ensure several factors which could make them usable in the public domain, first of all, because it was mainly used and utilized and designed by the MOD in general. And the migration towards the supply of intelligent solutions and technologies stemming from the aerospace made possible with the AI to complete a framework where it was complying with the public safety, as well as the technological requirements, which is basically being capable of lifting things with battery technologies that could allow them to do that, with a range which was adequate to start from. So it's been a long genesis for this technology. And although I was personally involved in flying drones, military drones, I was, as a very early career, a jet pilot in the Air Force, and also was recalled for flying very, very large drones in conflict area. And then my interest was indeed how can we use that for civilian applications as opposed to MOD, technically speaking. At the time, the market was not mature enough. I'm talking about even 10 years ago.
Okay.
Farmers, logistic area, and even surveillance in respect of public safety and all the rest of it wasn't in great demand. And people just didn't know what to do with those.
No, it's
graphs.
People don't talk about. Well, obviously now people are talking about it a lot more, and we've been talking about it here for the last, I'd say, probably 4 years. But obviously, you've been dealing with it a lot longer than that.
Yes, it is. It is the case. We need to also demystify or de-dramatize the use of the drones, and it's very essential that the public understand how crucial it is for the growth of the last mile logistics to accept these aircraft as a valid solution, as much as they are delivered with the local electric bike for Uber, Eat, and all the rest of it. It's part of the tools that the logistics and the world in general has. And there has been a lot of noise around the use of the drones for the wrong reasons, as well as the noise and the counterproductive effect of some operators and who I cannot name specifically, but everybody knows, as to using prematurely without the framework in place, especially in regards to the regulation,
Yes.
to operate those things in a safe environment,
Mm.
and do what they were supposed to do. So we need to make sure and educate the marketplace that it's actually with the AI embarked in these new systems. And we're talking about drones that mostly people understand being flying,
Yes.
but it's only one aspect of the dronology,
Okay.
where in fact you've got everything that crawls, rolls on the floor, dies, or flies.
A lot more to it than people imagine.
Yes, and in the public safety domain, or disastrous relief and emergency services, people have little knowledge about how crucial it is to implementing those solutions in a timely fashion. It saves lives, it saves money, it is better for the environmental concerns and the CSR in general.
So, um, can you walk us through the journey of turning your sort of drone concept into a functional solution, and talk to us about the biggest challenges that you've found with that?
Yes, and the I've been concentrating to define and map the scope of what is possible to do with a type of aircraft. And obviously, being an ex-pilot, I have concentrated on aircrafts.
Yes.
And I mean, I don't want to use drones because we see drones as being like a little thing that has four propellers, and
Yeah.
in actual fact, it's more complicated than that. And the reason for that is because it's all kinds of. It could be an airplane, could be also a helicopter at the same time, and something that crawls on the floor as well. And it's because we're a constant evolution. It's like a spacey evolution. The DNA of the drone technology is evolving as fast as the demand
Yeah.
for things that we did not know about even a year ago, and that's the thing that has really fascinated me, and
The pace of it all.
at the pace, the race for technology,
Mm.
the adoption of AI, which, by the way, I need to emphasize the idea that um, the level of complexity
Mhm.
that is embarked in these things is way beyond any AI that people would debate even today, as to having an autonomous taxi or a vehicle
Yeah.
of any sort. So much so that it's fair to say that the embarked AI, which is propelling and guiding these aircrafts, are probably 10 years ahead of anything
Mm.
that the public understands.
Yeah.
And so it's extremely important to reinforce the concept of safety.
Yeah.
And again, talking about the challenges,
Mhm.
it's because the main challenge is public safety. And
Absolutely.
that's the view that the regulators take
Mhm.
in order to avoid the escalation of risks which have not been accounted for. And let's face it, when you are on the ground, you can stop any vehicle, whether it is AI or not. When you're up in the air, it's a completely different story.
Yes.
And therefore, you don't want things falling off out of the sky. And the fact that some operators in logistics um, have actually prematurely released tests which were not fully approved by the civil aviation's authorities is a massive problem,
It's
because
alarming, isn't it?
it's a very alarming. It has actually alarmed people and antagonized with those who were the early adopters
Mm.
potentially,
Mhm.
and actually defeated the concept of propagating this wonderful technology further in down to domestic level.
Yes.
As so, it's fair to say this is I can't see this happening anytime soon. But this is where it's interesting because the interest and the technology is shifting towards much more mature capacities, which, to return to the subject of logistics, is important. So two things which I attracted my attention and I devoted a lot of time on researching is how can we be introducing this as a tool in the logistics for warehousing, inspections, detection, of all kinds. I just take an example. I embarked very quickly on the idea that if you don't have barcoding, or if you have barcoding, but if you haven't got DHL sort of capacity to have robotized in the dark recognition systems, it will be very costly for a small or medium size operator in logistics to invest in something that actually clones the level of information they have in their systems with the reality in a warehousing. So I immediately thought about using those as pre-programmed system that any operator can get into a car from one small warehouse to another one, scanning what's on the shelf and being left too long, and have a clear idea feeding back a system, docking into an area where they can extract the intelligence they gathered and exercise some clarity as to the patterns, and do what you guys do best in logistics, is to move things around.
So, like, how many logistics businesses, are using solutions like this at the moment?
Well, at the moment, not many. There are a couple of them in Germany using these massive poles, and you have like a rover, let's call it a rover on the ground, that is radio guided or wire guided, which stems from the classic automation in the automotive industry. And they have a camera that picks up whatever they need to read, and that's an element. The second one is about using something that flies. Now, this is where the regulation plus the complication of AI and autonomous vehicle management comes in, and we are at a stage where, unless you have an operator to do that, it's very, very difficult. And I cannot expand too much on the technology because we're working on alternative solutions. But basically, essentially, to be safe, a drone operates by GPS location. Of course, in a warehouse, you can't have that. And one could say, okay, we can reproduce a GPS echolocation, and it would be great to do that. Unfortunately, it doesn't work that way because the OEM in a drone are designing things to fly outside. Some people have been designing things to fly inside, but still they require an operator that can overrule some movements in order to, one, not crash simply the device, two, being safe for the operators around, and three, because it's battery embarked, for public safety, there is a concern here, let alone the financial investment. So the context is still completely embryonic in the technology, and this is where really I'm concentrating on, because this is a real fascinating aspect. We need to come back to basic science in terms of how do animals fly in the dark and all the rest of it. And it sounds esoteric, but the fact is, unless a drone manufacturer, and I think I can anticipate this to evolve, has a clear interest in the surveillance, and I think it's been overlooked in general. The public and of course the conflicts have generated a huge interest in getting drones finalized for being so efficient in the sky. rather than as a tool in sky, but also the smaller 3D space. And
But it's coming though.
it's coming.
It's coming, isn't it?
It's coming.
You mentioned 10 years previously.
Yes.
Do you think, will that be in your mind in specific industries? Are there certain industries that will take the lead on this?
Yes. Yes. And because the more reasons to develop a device that does that in that environment is multiple. First, you can read. Nobody really wanted to hear about this reading on the top of the shelf sort of thing. And secondly, today there is a huge interest for surveying or exercising some control as to dangerous goods in a warehouse.
Yes.
So the infrared equipment that you can get on some of these drones are now becoming mature. The definition is good enough to actually detect and program the spectrum where you're looking at in terms of a battery left into even a camera in a box or something that would be detected. So this is another second application, and you have the third application, which is basically the safety of the personnel. For instance, that you operate in dangerous environment, and now these devices can be embarking some payloads that would sniff methane, uh, carbon dioxide, fire hazard. They can even embark some loudspeakers to direct people in the dark. So in case of a blackout, people are not left behind. So there's a complete health and safety environment, which, as you know, health and safety means the sky the limit. Without play of words. So it's a fascinating area because every day you kind of it's like a puzzle where you add bits and it becomes a lot clearer. At the same time, it's almost the framework is growing at the same time.
Well, like you said, the technology and the pace of technology is just getting faster and faster, and the opportunities are just huge. It's so exciting.
With that, a number of limitations. And again, the regulators have a history of lagging behind in terms of preparing the ground for this development. So this is today, I think we've acquired maturity in terms of the technology. AI is at its peak, and the skill of those who are operating that are also extremely advanced. And so there is far less to do other than implementing. And then the implementation is a topic that is could be problematic. Some countries are preparing the sky, as they call it, for instance, Australia, New Zealand, and America as well. And it has a lot to do with the population density, urbanization, and all the rest of it for obvious reasons. So it's fair to say that there will be some implementation on the way of the least resistance. It doesn't mean that it is not going to be followed by highly industrialized environments, but the regulators will have to take that into account. So that's probably at the moment the airspace regulation, which hasn't been prepared for this.
No.
Because they were prepared and managed the MOD aspect of it, which is huge in terms of highways, sky highways, and they have their corridors, and it's very regimented. In fact, people don't see that this way, but it's fair to say that they didn't believe too much into these potentials.
So they've not planned accordingly.
They haven't planned accordingly, and therefore they're trying to catch up. So UK and the CA is actually doing a great job at revisiting all this, and we can anticipate a number of opportunities, but at the same token, a number of obstacles that are unlikely to be challengeable for several years. So this is where we need to concentrate, where it is durable and feasible. I'll take an example, for instance,
Yes.
the size and the payload and the range has a lot to do with the acceptance by the CA.
Yeah.
I take an example, Dronamics, that has an aircraft capable of taking off with 350 kilos and on a range of 2,500 miles is a remarkable achievement. Having said that, it's probably unlikely to be useful in the UK,
Yeah.
apart from some islands, as opposed to Australia, where it makes absolute complete sense to deliver to a farm or any communities that kind of payload,
Yeah.
uh, because basically the airspace is not cluttered up with other activities. So I'm stating the obvious. So what does that mean in terms of what's left? Well, it's all in the hands of the manufacturers themselves to identify the niche markets that are likely to be uh, the ones capable of expanding. And the good news for that is, well, as you know, the 75% of the market is already acquired by DJI. And being in China, they have the same concern that we have in the UK. So the similarities in geopolitical or just simply the geography is very favorable to adopt.
Yes.
And today, for instance, solar panels are installed in every slope you can find in China by conversion of rice fields and all the rest of it. And it's working very well because the technology now is capable of lifting 150 or 60 kilos and
It's
get all these
amazing.
panels installed without any endangered context for any operators around. Whereas before they had to have special cranes,
Yeah.
lorries going up the mountains. So it's a massive advantage.
It is, absolutely. But obviously, talking about solar there, to what extent do you feel drone technology will contribute to people's sustainability goals?
Yes.
What, such as reducing emissions or optimizing energy use? How do you see that being an impact?
Well, it has a massive impact because before, without this technology, not only to install it, but to maintain it and monitor what's going on, we are limited by space.
Yes.
So any restricted footprint is a difficulty to put solar farms or any means of green energies. And by having a tool that you can use to lodge anything at any altitude or very easily is durable, not only because you made the best of any space available, but you also can use those things to service, maintain, monitor, and therefore maximize the investments and return on investment faster.
Wonderful. It's got so many advantages. We could go on, couldn't we?
Yes, absolutely. It's just mind-boggling.
So you've talked about the regulatory and logistical sort of hurdles. We've talked a bit about sustainability. What feedback have you received, if any, of early adopters of the solution? And how do you think that feedback has adapted the approach to move forward?
Well, it's an interesting question because in general, it seems that the market doesn't generate the opportunities. It's because a bunch of people interested in the technology are more interested in the what they have to offer, and whether it is to an immature market or not. There's an educational process that takes place, and sometimes faster than others. So there are the ways of least resistance. But by contrast, it's fair to say that the public authorities have been really positively responsive to this. So much so that you wouldn't think of Royal Mail being at the forefront of drone technology, but they are. And
yeah, it's impressive.
Both on fixed wings and with heavy payload, 60 kilos. And again, because the technology evolves very, very fast, you will find that the new DJI cart system actually delivers medication on offshore platform to local communities and in a much more efficient way. Because you if you want to put a big aircraft in the sky, you end up in terms of sustainability with the same problems that you had in the
Of
first place,
course.
unless it's electric. But let's face it, and there is no question about that as yet, unfortunately. The um, electric aviation um, is um, is limited,
Yes.
and the first attempts have resulted in financial fiascos, and it's not mature enough until um, the fuel cells
Mhm.
are implemented with hydrogen. And it's exactly what also any kinds of drones, whether they are helicopters or both
Mm.
helicopters and fixed wings, are coming in, because at some point, when we can adapt this technology,
Mm.
which was developed for vehicles, uh, it's going to be a complete game changer in the range and also the payload you can get. So you can get anything you want from disaster relief, and it's not a far-fetched idea to even use what it's possible to could put lift 200 kilos of water or solution to fire extinguish some. We're using today, and I personally am involved in those things, in spraying historical monuments with solutions that restore instantly
Yeah.
everything, and we embark quite a lot of fluid at 100 meters altitude, which is completely it was inconceivable even 5 years ago.
Mm.
So it's
People
impossible.
wouldn't even think about this kind of thing, would they?
No,
They just wouldn't. There are so many examples of drone use that people just don't think. We think, I take my boys to the park and you see their friends all flying drones, and that's the only drone people relate to, isn't it?
exactly.
Currently.
Mostly as a nuisance, but
Yeah, they are dangerous. But we've got a lot of export managers and supply chain managers that listen to our podcast. So, for any export managers or buyers listening, in your opinion, how does sort of the drone solution compare cost-wise to traditional final mile options?
well, in very difficult areas to reach, and it's not far from home here. If you take the Hebrides and Scilly Islands and some places in Scotland, uh, to deploy any load of any kind, whether it is a kilo or 100 kilos, would necessitate a long journey by road,
Yes.
then a transferring onto a vessel or a small boat, then another reloading operation to the very last mile end. And I think that this is where it comes in, because usually, and I've been in Norway and I've seen how it works, you can be literally 10 miles away, but having 2.5 hours journey to get there.
Yes.
So in many cases, including the emergency services, it's not durable.
No.
And boats and conditions, the cold, the seas are changing so fast that it is difficult to plan anything. So if you want to regulate and project manage the delivery in an adequate fashion in respect of the customer's expectation, you need to fly very, very fast in an area where it could be a football field, and in no time at all, you can at least today, on a regular basis as a service, deliver every single day and 4 or 5 times a day on a 10-mile radius, at least 40 kilo each time. That's a lot of freight
It is,
that
yeah.
would cost you the fuel, the carbon footprint, and the just the operational cost
Mm.
of having operators or drivers in a lorry, a pilot on your ship,
And
and everything
express
else.
handling and everything else, yeah.
So much so, we're talking about the last mile logistics, where people don't totally realize what it is also for a fleet at sea, where they are basically queuing in a stack before the port, where you may have some emergency for medicine or any sort of aid, including even food. Today, it's possible to deliver even tools and a gearbox or something to a offshore platform
Yes.
without the use of another vessel.
Yeah.
So
No delay.
the cost is ridiculous by comparison.
Yeah.
You use basically 10 kilowatt for a 10-mile radius sort of range, and the cost per kilo is ridiculously.
It is. Like you said, it's early days for the vast majority, isn't it now?
A truck costs a lot of money in the and even if it's a little van, but the most expensive drone carrying 40 kilos is no more than 13 grand. So in like for like, we're miles away
Yeah.
from the depreciation of what you would get for a similar activity.
So what advice would you give to supply chain and logistics professionals, manufacturers, considering drone solutions or other cutting-edge technologies for their future operations?
Think laterally. And that is probably the main exercise framework, whereby you try to identify the um, the opportunities to rationalize, and then work backwards, saying, okay, if we were to target specific local community deliveries, how will it work? What is the scope of their needs? And mind you, anticipate the customer's shift in adoption, because you deliver medicine, say to a local surgery in twice a day, and all of a sudden you're going to have people wanting their newspaper. They want this, and by the way, Amazon takes forever to deliver in those remote areas, and we want it now because we are used to have our medicine or our mail every day. That's basically the point that the view that the Royal Mail took, and with it, the sky the limit again sort of concept. So you have to watch what you're wishing for, because
Absolutely.
if you're not ready for the same lateral thinking agility that the marketplace develops in adopting those things, then you basically hinder your progress. So it's identifying the opportunities, and identifying the opportunities to scale them up, and understand what it takes to operate at that level. So again, everybody can, with some appropriate training, get into a van very quickly. It's basically a driving license, obviously. As far as the technology evolves a lot, and very, very quickly, flying those things are not in a domain of flying little drones that you get at Christmas. With it, it's highly regulated. The licenses are now for that sort of weight extremely difficult to maintain, because you have to set up your own framework, and in regards of the regulations, you have to self-assess for health and safety insurances purposes. So all this is slightly contradicting the possible adoption sooner rather than later, because we need people to do that. But I think this is for the logistic sector to recognize the potential and get prepared for this, as employing pilots and training them in-house, I think is the answer for the future. Having squadrons of people who could deploy pretty much anywhere, and being interacting with each other in order to maximize the footprint.
Absolutely. It's absolutely fascinating, Etienne. I could listen to you all day. I always feel like that. It's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much for having us today.
Thank you, Amanda.
It's been a pleasure. It's been lovely.